And what is the deal, boys and girls? We're opening up the OG Sports Rap Barbershop. Thanks for hanging out with us, coming along for the ride. I'm your host, Professor G. Mark Gray. I spell it Mark with a K, Gray with an A. And we are glad to have you along for what we hope to be a quality radio product, at least according to myself. And this comes to us today from our Fragile files. You know, wake me if you have not heard this one over and over again. That's right, boys and girls. On a day where Mike Tomlin became no longer the Pittsburgh Steelers coach, and he will have to sit out for a year. We've learned today that next year he's definitely going to sit out. The Steelers themselves, fortunately, are looking for draft capital. So Mike Tomlin, is going to be a sideline on the sidelines of NFL coaching, at least for one more year, if not a two, because the Steelers are looking for compensation. Have you ever thought that you would see a coaching carousel that contains first John Harbaugh, second Mike Tomlin, and then you've got compensation to be looked at because Mike Tomlin is stepping down in Pittsburgh with a year left on his contract? How about that? So that's why he walked away. Wasn't fired. They probably would have brought him back had he wanted to stay. But as fate would have it, Mike was like, I'm ready to get up out of here now. Let's get the clock started on the next chapter. And I just hope that next chapter is in the nation's capital. And again, yes, there's some Regency bias. All right. I will say this. We're a lot closer to Tidewater in the DMV than he was in Pittsburgh. And see, it's a lot easier for him to get back and forth to that part of Virginia. I think it's a perfect fit. I really do. Now, whether it happens like that, whether Magic Johnson and the team in D.C. with the owner formerly of the Golden State Warriors, my whole thing is this. Take your time. Some things, sometimes the best meal is certainly not Tavala, where you just grab something frozen and you stick it into wish I was a microwave and you come out with processed food. No, this is something that you kind of have to watch. It's like wine. It's going to ferment for a while. The longer it stays on the shelf, the more flavor that it has. So you watch that. And speaking of flavor, there was a lot of flavor in Baltimore yesterday, too, which is crazy. I mean, you talk about a seismic shift in the landscape of pro football. You normally come into the regular season figuring that two of the most stable franchises in the league are the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, you think about it. Mike Tomlin there for 19 years in Pittsburgh. Harbaugh, 18 for the Ravens. And so it's just ironic on the day that Mike Tomlin says, it's time for me to keep it moving. I don't know where I'm going to land, but it ain't going to be up in here. Reports are that there was a whole lot of emotion. Players were crying, front office people were crying. That is fine. That just lets you know that inside the building, Tomlin was revered, much like Harbaugh. But I will admire both of those heated rivals. I mean, let's be real for a second. In a 4-team division, the best two teams have consistently been Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Okay? Cincinnati had their 1 year with Joe Burrow. They went to a Super Bowl, haven't been back since. All right, making a comedy of errors as they always do in their front office. You look at Baltimore, who's always a playoff contender, couldn't get over the hump, couldn't win in big games in certain places, but they were pillars of contention in their division. Okay, that's what we've come to used to. And it remains to be seen what this seismic shift, because yesterday was seismic. I mean, you couldn't have had a bigger earthquake unless some buildings moved. I mean, this was some unbelievable stuff. I'm not going to say it's bizarre. I'm going to say it's efficient. Because if you're looking to make a change and try to get back into the mix for contention next season, then now you got to hit the ground running. And I admire both the Steelers and the Ravens organizations for making critical steps for the future. And see, I think oftentimes in business, you let emotions get in the way. But I will say this, Steve Bisciotti handled his press conference, and it was amazing because somebody asked the question, if John Harbaugh had made the playoffs, would he have been back? And Steve Bisciotti shot out there, yeah, for another week. That just lets you know where you got into in Baltimore. And I was saying that all along. I think the things that may have alienated Steve Bisciotti as a guy who's really close to that city. If I'm not mistaken, he grew up there. And you can't tell me that he wasn't a little bit bothered by the way that his coach did not defend his city, his fan base, okay, and the people who have made the Ravens the organizations that they are, the folks in the community. And when the commander-in-chief calls your town a hellhole, he calls your mayor the DEI mayor. He threatens to bring ICE into the city because of crime rates that are going up, which was a bold-faced lie. Okay, and then Harbaugh stepped back and said, whoa, I got this guy's back. When you do that, you have to win, and you have to do something elite. Harbaugh didn't do that. I think you could see relief. There was nothing that was not transparent in Baltimore yesterday. I got to give Steve Bisciotti, and look, they take a lot of beatings, some well-served in Baltimore for the way that they carry themselves from a media standpoint. It's even known their facility is not the, training facility or like Valley Ranch they used to have in Dallas and all that kind of stuff. They used to have Redskins Park down in Ashburn, Virginia. In Baltimore, they call the home of the Ravens business offices the Castle. And Steve Bisciotti, the king, pulled the plug on his coach, told people why and how they're going to get after it. And he also joked about, seeing if Mike Tomlin would be interested in interviewing for his job. And it makes no sense. It was a great chuckle in the room, I will say that. It was hilarious. But, you got to have to give the Steelers compensation for it. And maybe then they can find a quarterback. Wouldn't that be funny? And theoretically, Pittsburgh could end up trading Mike Tomlin's rights for their next quarterback. How would that look? I mean, I would pay money to see that whole scenario play out. But here we are. I mean, Baltimore settled at the quarterback position. It's the parts around him, Lamar Jackson, that is, and the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator, but most of all, the play caller. The play calling, and even Todd Monken kind of owned the fact that his stuff may work in college the way he calls a game. It ain't working in the pros. And that is the one thing that I think John Harbaugh has to take full ownership of in Baltimore. The inconsistency of the play calling by his offensive coordinators, which I don't believe has been putting Lamar Jackson into position to make big plays and win games. I don't know if it's part of Lamar's demeanor to buck the system sometimes. Every once in a while, you got to tweak a play or two. And I think he's one of those guys that's just so preoccupied with following what coach said that, sometimes you got to break from the script. Aaron Rodgers could do that. That's where Baltimore failed Lamar Jackson. And I do think it has something to do. I'm going to say this. I'm a boy of the South myself. But sometimes, kids are encumbered by the environment, by how they grew up. And I think that in many cases, that's Lamar Jackson. Physical talent, high football IQ, but with the game on the line, he's not that guy, I don't believe, that can improvise at the line of scrimmage. Now, you got guys that after the snap who can improvise, and he may be the greatest ever at that. There's no doubt about it. There's him, there's Michael Vick. I can't think of too many. Colin Kaepernick when he was playing. Yeah, I said it, Colin Kaepernick. But just dynamic with the way they, dual threat quarterbacks. But here we go. I mean, Ravens and Steelers making headlines on the same day, both, well, basically within 24 hours of each other. One coach fired, an icon with a Super Bowl ring and damn near 2 decades in one spot. The other one with a Super Bowl ring, damn near 2 decades in place, and they're both out and figure to be out all next season, though there is no contractual obligation for Harbaugh. So I don't know if he fits in New York. I'd love to see that media scrum because Baltimore's PR people have always done a great job of kind of protecting their players and their coaches from a voracious media appetite. Baltimore got, 2 newspapers, 3 TV stations, 1 sports talk station of some renown. You can navigate through that. I don't know if John Harbaugh can handle New York media. I don't think that's a fit. I really don't. Now, I think if you fill the folks in Philly with some truth serum, if it comes down to Nick Sirianni and his 1 Super Bowl and John Harbaugh, his 1 Super Bowl victory, and you put it on a platter, I mean, if they were going to make a move with Sirianni, it would make more sense to get Harbaugh because he's familiar with how Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie does things because he was a part of Andy Reid's staff. So all things being considered right now, when you put everything on the table, the epicenter of the football universe, despite the playoffs going on right now, is, in fact, the DMV. No teams in the playoffs, but the biggest headlines right now. Because even Aaron Rodgers' decision is now on the back burner. I'm waiting to hear when he's going to retire and who he will retire as. Will he retire as a Packer or as a Steeler or just A-Rod? I could see him doing that. Now, count me as one that wouldn't be shocked if he decided, I don't want to go out like that. You know, I'm going to talk to Tom Brady about the avocado ice cream, and I'm going to try to, latch on to one team that may need a fossil to get them over the hump, and we'll try to do it again. But I just found such delicious irony in the fact that the Ravens had a press conference to talk about why they fired John Harbaugh, a successful Super Bowl winning coach, the day that Mike Tomlin, a successful Super Bowl winning coach in the same division, basically resigned. It's a seismic shift in the NFL, the likes of which we rarely have ever seen, and I doubt if we'll see it again. But what a day it was. Anyway, we'll talk more about that on the other side. A special guest coming up a little bit later on. Melvin Bratton played for the 1983 National Championship team at the University of Miami as we count down to the kickoff of the National Championship game. It's your boy, Professor G. Barbershop is open. Come on in, set a spell, and learn something before you're done. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. I'm Professor G, and remember, we all we got. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Fragile Files. That's right, where we ponder the sports world's most oft-injured players, and it just brings us back to Anthony Davis of the Dallas Mavericks. It's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. Thanks for hanging out with us. And I'm glad I am not a Mavericks fan because right now, if I was a season ticket holder, I'd burn my tickets in effigy. Now, look, I think that Cooper Flagg is going to be ultimately the face of the franchise in Dallas, but you don't want to work to have your face of the franchise player have to assume that role in his second season, but that's where Cooper Flagg is right now because once again, the somewhat less than immortal, oft-injured Anthony Fragile Davis will probably be spending the rest of his season auditioning for supermodel of eyewear. That's right. This dude really is just not worth the injuries that he has. Now, remember, he suffered ligament damage in his left hand on about 6 days ago. The team announces yesterday that he won't require surgery, which is a better outcome than the early reports, which were suggesting his season might be over. So he'll be reevaluated in 6 weeks, with the potential to go up to 8 more weeks. Here's the deal. This is another in a long series of injuries that, quite frankly, don't make him worth the trouble that he brings to an organization. If you're going to get hurt, we ought to have a body of work that says, wow, this is what we're missing. But in many respects, I think with Fragile being on the bench, they now know what's up. You start planning for life after. And Nico Harris may never get a job in the NBA again because that is proving to be one. It's like bad wine. Sometimes you can let it ferment a little bit too long and it ends up too dry, or not long enough and it's just awful to the palate. Okay? Let's be clear for a second. Now, the only redeeming thing that Davis could have done for Dallas in one of the worst trades now in sports history is just be healthy enough for the franchise to be able to trade him. The trade deadline is February 5th, right? This dude previously missed 15 games in November with a calf strain and basically has been sidelined for half of the Mavericks' 40 games this season. And again, reports out of Dallas say that they have resumed trade discussions regarding Davis, but who's going to want to make a move with you for a guy that's been hurt ever since he got there, that once you got him healthy, he's now hurt again and probably out for the season? I mean, Anthony Davis is just such an atrocious acquisition. You have to ask yourself, what is his trade value? Think about it. They're using insider trading terms such as he is a volatile asset in the market. I mean, he's just going up and down like stocks, right? Dude, that's penny stock right now. Okay? Anthony Fragile Davis is penny stock. Because you think about it. He's missed half of the 40 games this season with either a calf injury, a groin injury, and that says a lot about his balls, and a hand injury. So if you an organization that's looking to talk to Dallas about the prospect of a guy whose potential has always been greater than the result because he can't stay healthy. And see, this is why teams are so reluctant. And the NBA has a great guaranteed collective bargaining agreement, and you will never back away from that. But in many respects, the outlandish decisions in terms of salaries for baseball players and basketball players make you appreciate just how frugal the NFL is. Yeah, because you get your signing bonus guaranteed. Everything else is based on pay, if you can play. And think about it. Anthony Davis can sign a $275 million max extension. And that's what he wants. There ain't no way in the hell I would do that. I mean, think about it. They've got Dallas on the hook for $58.5 million next season with a player option for $62.8 year after that. There's no way I'm a trade partner for Dallas. And if Dallas can't get that number off the books, they're going to be crippled. Unbelievable. I've never seen a player who has been crippled himself so often now crippling an organization. Wow. I mean, they got to come up with some kind of fragile clause in the next collective bargaining agreement. I'm sorry. You can't have a guy playing 20 games. Now, when he's in there, he's balling. I will give him that. He's giving you 20 and 11, blocking almost 2 shots a game. That's decent. But it's not like it was when he was in L.A., where he was giving you 25 and 11, and he was stellar to get this deal. And now Dallas is on the hook. So, sucks to be you, Dallas. It really does. I mean, you're stuck with a guy who's basically a used car that doesn't run. And that's where we at with Fragile. So I'm introducing the Fragile clause. If you have 3 season ending injuries in a space of 5 years, we got to be able to renegotiate your deal. I'm an owner paying you guaranteed money based upon your collective bargaining agreement, an agreement that was well done. Can't do anything about that. But if you can't deliver, you can't get paid. I'm sorry. And this dude, I don't mean to be taking any money out of his pocket, but when you see that guy coming, he's like the Grim Reaper. Run. Because he's not going to help you. And he's going to become a generationally paid damn near billionaire. And that's the problem with the association. The association got to really start fixing some of the problems that have gone with these, what do we call them, guaranteed contracts. That, to me, could be the death sentence of the association. There's going to have to be some reworking of this because guys are getting paid. First off, this is a league that now preaches load management. Reduce the number of minutes that you can play in back-to-backs. They've created all kinds of legislation or rules that force the teams to make sure that players are getting adequate rest and taking care of themselves better so that owners can get the return on their investment. If you invest in Anthony Davis in stock terms and he comes in as a, 5-star stock, shall we call it, and he's only playing you for 3 stars because he can't stay healthy, owners shouldn't be on the hook for that. It shouldn't be a oops, my bad, because somebody's always healthy, especially when the league is doing about as much as they can. I mean, remember, it's not like it was in the 80s, y'all. Magic and the boys, when they were trying to get out of Detroit during the NBA Finals, they had to fly commercial. Sometimes you miss your flight because of an overtime game. You can't get out until the morning. That's not happening any. You got personal trainers and chefs and all that kind of stuff. How do these guys continue to keep on hurting themselves? And I mean, extended injuries. Now, are we saying that there are too many games being played? Are the games too long? I've heard Adam Silver actually talk about the sweet spot for a game might be 4 10-minute quarters and fewer regular season games. Well, you're not going to play fewer regular season games because the buildings that in most towns are subsidized by a corporate public partnership, you get the variances and all that stuff for the land and get discounts for the land, and you have, like we see in L.A., the Intuit Center, which was pretty much built by the Clippers and Steve Ballmer. All right, so we don't have that public-private partnership when it comes down to negotiating contracts in the NBA. And Anthony Davis may be the cautionary tale for the Dallas Mavericks to work out some kind of buyout when you start looking at the enormous amount of money that they have to really pony up for a guy whose best work is not being done in the paint. It's being done on the bench where he shows off his Cartier glasses. And I don't know about you, but if I'm a season ticket holder, I don't want to see a guy in fresh suits, dope shoes, and fly glasses. I want him to put a damn headband on around his braids, which are always tight. But, of course, when you got that much free time on your hands because you always convalescing, somebody's going to be there to tighten you up. But the the NBA has to figure out this problem because in a league that preaches load management, in a league that, we got to play back-to-backs, but there's certain minutes restrictions now. Too many things are in the players' best interest now. And for them to continue to keep getting hurt with these debilitating season-long or season-ending injuries, I don't know what the league can do. I really don't. And basketball may have its own little problem because the amount of games that these kids are playing even before they get to college. So this Anthony Davis saga, it has always been somewhat humorous. You can put over-under now coming into the season on Anthony Davis' ability to play. Right. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I was setting a line, it would be no more than 30 games. And you can't load manage somebody who can only play 30 of an 82-game schedule. It just don't make any sense. So if I'm the owners now, here's my marketing chip or my bargaining tool, and I can see, much like we're seeing with the WNBA, there's going to be a clash of the Titans at the next CBA negotiations. Trust me. Because, again, you have too many owners around the league that are eating bad contracts for either A, bad transactions. Now, look, if you make a trade and the guy stays healthy and it just doesn't work out, hey, that's a gamble that you blew. Sorry. You know, maybe he doesn't fit in the rotation. He doesn't work in the locker room. He just doesn't fit with your organization. Then you move him along. But these injuries and this notion of, well, I can't help being hurt. Well, I've tried to help you not be hurt, and you still hurt, and I can't be affording to pay you $275 million, and you always hurt. That's crazy to me. You can't find any other industry in this country where you could miss 3/4 of your work year, which is a truncated work year. It's not like you got to go to work, 300 days a year? No. You play 82, and then there's practice time. That's it. It's not that hard. I'm tired of hearing all the lamentation about, oh, you don't know what it's like. No, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like to be injured and make $275 million and then be out for the season again. What's fair and equitable about that to the owners, much less the fans, who are still forking over dollars to watch you be a fashion model instead of a baller? But that's just me. It's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. Remember, we all we got. It's your boy, Professor G. I'm back at it. OG Sports Rap continues. And interesting developments now circulating throughout the National Football League, as earlier today, the Associated Press reported that rumors have linked Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman to the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching vacancy, but the reports indicate he's decided to stay with the Fighting Irish. Now, those reports also intimate that Freeman is committed to Notre Dame, despite interest from several NFL teams, among them the Steelers, Giants, Titans, Browns, among them. And let's be clear about something here. All right, first off, if Marcus Freeman comes to the NFL, which I don't think he is, and you might as well stay at Notre Dame, because under the Golden Dome, you really don't have a salary cap, right? You're an independent school, which is a blessing and a curse, because you can schedule whoever you want to schedule, play whomever you want to play, as long as you can get on a schedule. The flip side to that, if you're Marcus Freeman, how do you convince yourself that, given the scheduling constraints with mega conferences and you not being in one, let's be clear for a second, you're not going to get any whole lot of juice by playing in the ACC. Just ask the University of Miami. Still, this is a really interesting thought, because I do believe somewhere down the line, Marcus Freeman does have the demeanor of an NFL coach. I think he can relate to players. I think he's organized. His teams play pretty good with discipline and stuff like that. Normally, you have to beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame doesn't beat themselves. But Freeman officially has reaffirmed his commitment to Notre Dame for this season as of now. Now, Adam Schefter was one of the ESPN guys who sort of broke this theory. Not quite a story yet. It's a theory. And a story is, when a theory becomes a thing, well, Marcus Freeman to Notre Dame is not necessarily a thing yet. However, Schefter did report that Freeman is not going to pursue any NFL opportunities at this time and will deny any NFL interviews that come his way. Now, he's got a revised contract, but here's what makes this story, to me, rather interesting. Because Pittsburgh, has no problem now. One of the places that was really reluctant to give black athletes an opportunity to play back in the day is quite comfortable, I should say, with a black guy running their franchise. And so, too, is the organization, because the reports are that it was a very emotional day yesterday in Pittsburgh. But if you want to build for the future, and I think that this is what makes this story really interesting, and I think it has some legs. Marcus Freeman is a really young guy. He's like 30-some years old. Pittsburgh traditionally hires coaches. I mean, they've had 4 in their history, basically, since 1972 when they became relevant, okay? And you think about it, there's Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and, wow, Mike Tomlin. I mean, Pittsburgh, when they go all in, and they're looking to create an era, not just create a revolving door. So I'm not ready to buy in that Marcus Freeman is going to be the next coach in Pittsburgh. But when you can handle the pressure cooker of Notre Dame and you're coaching a whole bunch of kids that already are headed to the league in some way, shape, or form, you got to think about it. Now, again, Pittsburgh, and see, another factor is there's probably less media scrutiny in Pittsburgh than there is at Notre Dame. Remember, in many respects, to a lot of OGs and folks who grew up in my generation who remember the days of C.D. Chesley Sports and Paul Hornung and Lindsey Nelson with the Notre Dame recaps, we do pay attention. There's a reason that Notre Dame had the exclusive NCAA contract, well, NBC contract, I should say, for their games to be on national TV. How does that look in the future with all this bowl realignment? So where Notre Dame was once a really great job, okay, it was the mecca, if you will, of college sports, or at least college football for a great deal of time. That's not the case anymore. SEC, Big Ten plus 8, just they run the show. And if you can't line up with one of those conferences, which Notre Dame is clearly scared to do, don't go around telling me that you think that you're the biggest brand in college football and you won't come to the Big Ten. So if I'm Marcus Freeman, I put everything in the mix. Do I want to take the easy way out and stay in South Bend, which from what I hear is a great place to, raise a family and become an icon if you can win enough. 7-3, 8-2 ain't going to get it at Notre Dame as an independent, and it's not going to get you into the college football playoffs, period, point blank, okay? So if you're Marcus Freeman, there has to be a significant business decision made here, because if you're hot and the NFL is liking you right now, you might want to jump. College is always going to be there if that's where your passion is. And I get it. As one who's on campus, you develop a drive and an energy to help young people. It's really about seeing a light bulb go off in them and knowing that they're getting to shine through your help. Maybe that's Marcus Freeman's calling. I don't know. But I know if I'm Pittsburgh, I definitely try to make sure we could at least get on the interview list just to talk to him to see what it's about. Now, again, if you're Pittsburgh, you're coming in, you look at the talent that you have, it's going to be a minute. And does Freeman want to be a part of the foundation of the rebuilding process? Because Pittsburgh ain't going anywhere until they get a quarterback. That's got to be the modus operandi of the entire offseason, even more than firing their next coach. Okay, because Aaron Rodgers can't do it for a whole season. We've seen the litany of failed quarterbacks after Ben Roethlisberger. Where do you go now? That is an organization that is noted for its stability, that is really on some, ocean waves right now, and they got to get the coaching situation right. But you can't be coaching for the long term. You got to coach somewhat for the here and now. And the question would have to be with Marcus Freeman, is he ready for the here and now at the pro level? I'm Professor G. Mark Gray. Thank you for joining me on OG Sports Wrap here on the network as we continue to roll. Interesting tidbit that I found on Front Office Sports, which is a website that chronicles the business side of sports. And I think I talked to you maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but it's for real. The NBA is looking to roll in and take over European basketball, and it's going to pretty much launch a new league where franchises could be valued at up to $1 billion. Just think about that. Now, EuroLeague has been doing their thing for quite some time, okay? And what Adam Silver is now saying that he wants to have an alternate league where you could play in the biggest cities in Europe. In addition to Real Madrid, they're looking at putting a team in Barcelona, Villeurbanne, Fenerbahce, Istanbul, and this all came out in The Athletic. Now, here's really what's happened. The NBA's European pursuit formalized when they went to FIBA and they would jointly explore a new pro league in the region. Now, the NBA has its own problems right now, and for it to extend itself to Europe, it's a bit much. Now, I know the globalization of the game was the biggest part of, the 92 Olympics in Barcelona when you took the Dream Team over there. But I think the European League needs to remain the European League. Why does the NBA find itself needing to colonize another municipality and export your game? Because to me, the game is healthy right now, and it's not like if you're a badass Euro player, you're not going to get scouted or found anymore. Hell, they're playing Euro games on NBA TV during the regular season now. So I don't understand why the NBA, who really has to deal with some issues as it relates to the game in the States, why would you be worrying about trying to expand into Europe right now? I mean, really, are you trying to ride the wave of what the NFL is doing? One thing about the NFL, you take, 4 or 5 games a year over to Europe, Germany, London, places like that. Hey, I can understand that. But to run a full league, really? Wow, that means more collective bargaining issues. What are you going to do about load management? There's a different set of labor laws that may inhibit you from implementing some kind of, agreement between the Players Association and this particular league. Sometimes in life, you got to know when to strike, when the iron's hot, and you also have to know when you're going a little too far. And as much as I like the innovation and most of the leadership ideas and the way that Adam Silver has really navigated some trying financial times for his league, because when the Lakers are out there in limbo, that's a crushing blow for the league. But they were able to get a group together, and teams are flourishing right now. We're talking about triple figure in terms of millions of dollars, if not billions, for franchises right now. So when you got all this going on domestically, why are you worrying about more international expansion? Sometimes the league is really good where it is, and sometimes it's not. And you got a lot of baggage to figure out here in the States with our association. So as much as, and again, who wouldn't love to see something like that in maybe a summer league? But to go opposite the NBA, there may be an avid fan base, but then what happens to the stars? I mean, if you got an opportunity to play in the association, and let's say you're drafted here and you thought you were a top 10 pick or a lottery pick and you fall to 15, 16, what stops you from saying, let me put my name into the international pool, and then you got more fracas? I mean, because you can play pros basketball or be a pro in any sport like they are with soccer at 14, 15, 16 years old. So are we looking at that model where you're going to have young kids playing with grown men? And I'm looking to see what kind of compensation you're going to get. Are you going to pay that league players the $200-some million contracts that you give to people like Anthony Davis who can't play a whole season? Again, I don't mean to be a buzzkill here, but I would say the NBA needs to tighten up its ship around here, especially when you got a gambling trial that's still humming. Several of them, no matter what. You might want to pump the brakes on that. You really might. I thought it was an idea worth at least looking into. What I see right now is a recipe for disaster. And the last thing we want is the NBA to go down like its All-Star game has. So you feeling me? Anyway, it's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. It's OG Sports Rap on the network, rounding into another hour and a special guest. That's next on the network. Remember, we all we got. As we roll into another hour, it's your boy, Professor G. The Sports Rap Barbershop remains open, and you can still get a cold one. That's right. No last call over here just yet. So make sure you tell a friend. We always got room for you here in cyberspace. I am Mark Gray. It is OG Sports Rap. Thank you so much for hanging out with me at this time. This whole NFL coaching cycle figures to be one of the more interesting ones in terms of finding out who's going to land where as it relates to well, Baltimore's a primo spot. I can say that because at least at the moment they have their quarterback in place. They still have Derrick Henry as a running back to build around. You got receivers like Zay Flowers, who really needs to step his game up just a little bit. But still, when you look at the Ravens, their cupboard is anything but bare. Where you look at Pittsburgh, you got to find your quarterback first. All right, that's number one. And he is not on the roster right now. And are Steeler fans, Steeler Nation, and ask yourself this question, Steeler Nation. Are you willing to go into the draft to get your quarterback of the future and deal with the process of his maturity? And I think that's a fair question that can be assessed right here, right now. And I would venture to say that Steeler fan is not willing to do that. Okay, so where do you go from here? Because if you come in with the most brilliant coach with the greatest offensive mind going, who's going to be throwing the passes? And one thing about Pittsburgh, where the organization failed Mike Tomlin, okay? Again, I don't know who's shopping for the groceries there, but I know Mike Tomlin is probably the type of coach that is a grinder. I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to work with what I got. Well, see, here's the deal. You can't make good stew when you got bad produce. Okay, you can have the best of broth, the finest of meats, but if you put bad vegetables in there to create more of the broth, it's going to be a bad stew. And that's where the Steelers are to me as it relates to their inability to find a quarterback for damn near 20 years now. I mean, it's crazy. It was Ben Roethlisberger who played to the very end, and by the time he had retired, he was a fossil of the quarterback that he was. You bring Mike Tomlin along, and after Roethlisberger is a dearth of talent. I don't think that makes that job attractive to Marcus Freeman. And if you think the fan base is going to be or has been upset because the Steelers were in contention, making the playoffs, but not winning enough, next guy coming in is in for a rude awakening. But I think it's more important from Pittsburgh now to identify the quarterback. It's going to be tough. You may have to, this is where it'll be interesting to see how Pittsburgh handles the Mike Tomlin deal. Because theoretically, if you're the Steelers and you are really ready to move on from Mike Tomlin, and unlike Baltimore, they didn't fire their coach. Their coach resigned. So maybe he's more sick of the organization and unappreciative fan base that he'll sit this one out. But here's the deal. Steelers do have control of Mike Tomlin for another couple years. That means he becomes trade bait. And what better year to trade a Hall of Fame coach than 2026 when you've got at least 5 or 6 legitimate first-round prospect quarterback types that could be the difference in your franchise immediately. And see, sometimes rich folks want to hold on to their assets a little bit too long. This is one where if Mike Tomlin is already gone, and when he steps down and he says it was time, it's time. He probably wants to cool out and get to a new beginning. But if you're the Steelers and you have that carrot and there are so many teams around that really want to coach, maybe you start shopping that. Maybe you say, hey, you can have the rights to Mike Tomlin. He can still be retired. I guess the team, I don't know what the machinations of the contract are. I'm pretty sure if Mike Tomlin retires, there's some kind of compensation that he gets for at least a job well done mostly. And for a guy to never be involved in any kind of shenanigans, any kind of personal contribution, you can't say anything bad about the Mike Tomlin brand, okay? You can't. But he's an asset now. And he only becomes a liability if you keep him and don't get anything for him. And you can't, if you're the Steelers, in this moment in their history, not leverage the fact that you got a coach who is retired, but you have him under control for a couple years. If you want that draft pick, you make that move now. I think if I'm in Pittsburgh shoes, I'd do that. Because when Mike resigned or retired, however you want to look at it, he basically threw the middle finger up and said, Pittsburgh, I'm done with this. Time to move on. But if you're the Steelers as an organization and you want to get a quick fix, hey, trade Mike Tomlin, get the rights to draft the quarterback. And in this coaching cycle, you do have a bunch of terrific coaches who could fit in and bring discipline to the Steelers. All right, keeping it a buck with you. I mean, the guys like Anthony Weaver, he may not be a sexy hire, a sexy name, but people know him. Brian Flores. Okay, if you can make a move with, a team like Miami who needs a coach, somebody could bring some discipline. Tomlin fits down there, but maybe he wants to get away. If I'm Pittsburgh, though, I might be looking at, look, Tomlin has already said, I don't want to coach here anymore. I'm tired, I'm burned out. Let's move forward. All right, I'm gone. Conventional wisdom suggests that he's going to be doing TV next year. So he takes the year off. He watches as much film and has as many discussions with insiders so that the next time he gets a bite at the apple, hopefully in D.C., okay, I'm going to put on my best Capitol Hill lobbyist hat for that one. Heck, if I had the draft capital to give right now in Washington to get Mike Tomlin, I'd do it. But everybody likes Dan Quinn, and in all fairness to Dan, he did take a team from 5-12 to the NFC Championship game, and I'm anxious now to see what happens in year number 3. Because if it crashes and burns again, I'm like, oh, okay, I'd like to trade my somewhere between 1 and 10 pick next year, especially if I got Jaden Daniels, and boom, that's my plug and play maybe for another 10, 20 years. Maybe. You got to be proactive in times like this. This is a different type of situation. Okay, and even the situation between Harbaugh and Tomlin, fierce competitors when they were on the opposite sidelines of one another, but still totally two different circumstances as you start looking at the proverbial life after. And again, the fact that the Steelers do hold rights to Mike Tomlin makes that a really interesting position for the Rooney family to deal with. And, they made their money as successful business people, I might add. And you would think that just looking at the business side of it, taking all the emotion away, that if I'm Pittsburgh and I know that Mike Tomlin is not coming back and I still control his rights, what am I going to do with him? It would be organizational incompetence to get nothing for Mike Tomlin and you just have to let him walk. That would be just so bad business on a variety of different levels, to the extent that I think it would set that organization back. A benchmark like organization. Let's be clear. One of the great organizations since 1972. Okay, let's be clear about something. When Chuck Noll came along, because they were a barren franchise. Those of us, even us OGs, who grew up in the era watching Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Mel Blount, L.C. Greenwood, Donnie Shell, the whole bit. Those of us who grew up in that era don't really know how, like, the Pittsburgh Steelers were a laughingstock. They were a joke team. They were like really the Cleveland Browns of the old NFL era. So I know they don't want to go back. The question is, do the new Gs, who are OGs like me, but new Gs at running and making the day-to-day operation work at this seminal moment in their history? Because Pittsburgh, older fans, like people, for the Gs that are even older than me, and remember when Pittsburgh was butt awful? You know, they were excrement in the toilet bowl, quite frankly, for about 30 years. I mean, the stories that I get is that the Rooneys used to play the ponies and drink heavily. And the team was, you know, ornament until Chuck Noll came along, changed the trajectory of the organization, and made it one of the greatest in the history of the sport. If Pittsburgh's going to stay there right now, and they still have the rights, if you will, to Mike Tomlin, you got to shop him around like a player. You really do. Because if you see an asset that can turn your team around and you can get that quarterback that you need, you could trade literally Mike Tomlin's rights for the quarterback to get you on top. And then you can find the coach that instills discipline and can find an offensive coordinator with some vision, not none of that Arthur Smith type. I don't know where the fascination has become with Arthur Smith, but he couldn't call plays in Atlanta as a head coach. And you put him on the sidelines with Mike T, and what happens? Crickets. So I don't mean to be doing the work for you, Steeler fan. Okay, and there's supposed to be far greater minds that should be in the war room making these decisions. But to me, it's a very pragmatic one. And see, what the Steelers doing right now is they're saying they're trying to do everything politically correct. They're trying to make it seem like, well, okay, we didn't force him out, though we did. And you can see it at Cheshire Grin when he was, you know, and Mike Tomlin looks relieved. And there was some social media posts when he was talking on the phone to people at some sort of an event, and he looked relaxed to me. Now, I don't know if that was something from earlier in the year or most recently, but Pittsburgh, don't blow this one. I mean, really, this is you've blown on every quarterback circumstance since Ben Roethlisberger, pardon me. And with all due respect, this is your moment. You got some leverage. Dangle that carrot out there to some owner who thinks that they're just a coach away and you get the draft asset from them, a first-round pick. That's right. I'm suggesting that you offer your first-round pick in this year's draft for the rights to Mike Tomlin. I know that's innovative. That's crazy. It might sound even blasphemous, but you better get something for him before he walks and you're left with nothing while he's winning, okay? Now, I don't expect him to coach next season. I think he's going to take a break and exhale, but Pittsburgh has got to start thinking as though this is the 2000s. It's no longer the 90s. If y'all going to get back in the game, this is the time to do it. And funny enough, Mike Tomlin may help you out. It's your boy, Professor G, Mark Gray. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. We all we got. Yo, what happened with the team family Harbaugh? I thought those guys were the smartest coaches in the room, destined for excellence, builders of teams that have great confidence in them. Don't sound like that's happening to me in Los Angeles with the Chargers, at the very least. I mean, think about it. You had in Baltimore, John Harbaugh fired after a playoff loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which ruined their season. All right. And when I say playoff loss, I'm talking about a game they had to win because it was a playoff game. It was at home. They blew it. Consequently, John Harbaugh is now looking for a new job. But the interesting thing to note was that in the bad karma of the Harbaugh season, Jim Harbaugh came out and actually said that basically he believes he can take his team all the way to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game, saying, quote, "Those that stay will be champions." Not looking at this as an end, it's another beginning. Now, that's the spin of a coach. If you're a leader, you got to project optimism, right? You got to be that guy that projects, a kick-ass mentality, even though you don't have enough, bullets left in the clip, so to speak. But you will want, if you have a franchise quarterback, for him to have your back publicly, right? Well, if you saw any of that press conference, which was kind of awkward. Matter of fact, Jim Harbaugh just looks awkward behind the microphone. I don't know. And I like him. I like that guy. He's a regular dude. I like Jim a lot more than John. I think John is a somewhat pompous. There's a quiet arrogance about him. Whereas Jim is just like, hunker down and let's do what we got to do to try to win these games. Now, he, amongst all the critics of his quarterback, Justin Herbert, right? He's the one that's out there saying he's great, putting him out there on blast, maybe even too much, right? So you get to the question for him. How did he feel about the team moving forward? And when he goes, quote, "I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet, and it hasn't happened, so we'll have to reevaluate and see what happens." Wow. I mean, he didn't throw his coach under the bus, but those measured words in an emotional moment speak volumes. That dude sounds to me like, give me some players that are going to be able to make some plays all the time. I can get us there. Seriously. Or I really want to get out. And remember, you lose 32-12 to Houston, and it wasn't like the 2020 Offensive Rookie of the Year, Herbert, was efficient. He was only, 19-31 for $159? He did lead the team in rushing. He had 10 scrambles for about 57 yards, but the team didn't win. And again, you can't win without an offensive line. Herbert was sacked 6 times. Okay, so if I don't have weapons around me and I don't have guys up front, I'm trying to play through pain, why would he want to stay? I mean, because to me, the Chargers are that team that's like the hamster on the treadmill, right? Just running around, staying in shape, going nowhere. In a related story, they did fire their offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, another underachieving Harbaugh cast-off from Baltimore. This revolving cycles of the same coaches and stuff in the NFL is really beginning to make the game stale. Nobody else is really coming along with different kind of – it was like people thought Bill Walsh back in the day, legendary San Francisco 49ers coach of Hall of Fame renown, part-time broadcaster for a little while after the fact. Moral to the story was people thought the West Coast offense was crazy in its inception. The West Coast offense was created by Bill Walsh. And what is it? 3-step drops, quick passes, short passes, get the ball out into the flat. And then when you get a Jerry Rice or somebody like that who can go deep and stretch the field, or when you put Jerry Rice on one side of the field and John Taylor, shouts out to Delaware State. I mean, let's be real. Bill Walsh was crazy enough to say, something? I can win with 2 HBCU wide receivers because they're going to run my routes like that, and we're going to win. And they did. And they won with multiple quarterbacks. I mean, Walsh took that West Coast offense that the dopes in Cincinnati. And see, this is OG stuff here. Look it up. All right, it's at the top of my point of consciousness. They had a quarterback who I think was Hall of Fame caliber, Ken Anderson. Ken Anderson was the guy who basically was the guinea pig for this offense to work. All he did was become an all-pro. But Paul Brown, Mike Brown's father, who is the owner of the franchise in Cincinnati right now. First off, I would have to say, with all due respect to Boomer Esiason, that Joe Burrow is the best quarterback Cincinnati's had since Ken Anderson. You know, the Turk Schonerts of the world and all that kind of stuff, really. And Boomer did get you to the Super Bowl with all that, but Boomer ain't the quarterback that Joe Burrow is, and they're wasting him. I bring that up because that's what's happening in San Diego with the Chargers. They're wasting a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback because, A, they got a pedestrian offense, and I'm not quite sure that Jim Harbaugh is in his prime as an NFL coach, and he may be somebody that is better at being a college coach than he is a pro coach. Now, he did get his team to, I guess it was the 49ers with Colin Kaepernick to the Super Bowl. There's that dreaded word. People hate to hear it so much. That's right, I said Kaepernick. All right? Great American hero to me. Sorry. Stood for something, lost everything, remains an icon. Is what it is, okay? To the extent that when I find the right deal on his jersey, I will be rocking that too. All right? So what I'm trying to get at here is that this San Diego thing is so funny to me because you've got Harbaugh, who's always this guy, is never half empty with Jim Harbaugh. You don't need him to tell you that at the bench or at the podium, because we can see where they're up short. You got to fix your offensive line. So when you're quarterback in a post-game pressure, and granted, the emotions are still running high, you have to do media because you're the superstar quarterback. That's one of the things that goes with your job, okay? But the moment of candor is the thing that if I'm Los Angeles, the Chargers, because you got to remember the Chargers have been like bastardized throughout Southern California because they started in the AFL as the Los Angeles Chargers, moved to San Diego and became the Super San Diego Chargers. Remember when they had the chicken running around the stadium and whatnot? It was classic. Then they move them back to L.A. I don't understand it. I don't. For those of you of a certain age, it's like, Elizabeth Taylor getting married. You never know when she's going to get married, but at some point she's going to get married again. And that's how the San Diego Chargers have been operating. But you're in a different place right now, okay? First off, you're in L.A. L.A. just wants a winning football team. L.A. can be had by the Chargers if they wanted to. Because remember, the Rams left them anyway. Okay, so you've got passionate fans for the Rams, I guess. I think there's still a lot more Raider fans in Los Angeles than there are Rams fans. The greatest show on turf did not win a Super Bowl in the city of Los Angeles. They won the Super Bowl in St. Louis. Just saying. So the Chargers have a unique opportunity to, grab hold of the LA fan base to the extent that they care. I mean, remember, they got the history of the Lakers. They've got the dynasty that is the Dodgers right now. And then there's, we got this real nice, fat Super Bowl caliber stadium. We got two teams that inhabit it. LA's the only team that has a home game every week. And they still can't sell out. And LA fans want to be around winning teams. And not just, 10-6. They want deeper runs into the playoffs. To me, the quote by Justin Herbert says that your star quarterback don't have no confidence in the organization. That is a bold statement. Now, again, he'll get the benefit of the doubt. He's the perfect Southern California quarterback, the golden brown UCLA-like hair, the greenish eyes, he's good in commercials and stuff like that. And that's all well and good. But you have to really wonder if that team can get out of its way when you have a coach who seems to think they've got everything that they need to win. They just got to fire the offensive coordinator. And the quarterback says, I don't know if we got what it takes to win. Now, again, here were the problems. A team that was the best on third down this season, converting it 115 times. They go 1 for 10 on Sunday night. They went for it on 4th down 3 times. They only made 1. And that was a 1-yard sneak that initially was ruled short, but overturned on replay to give the Chargers a 1st down. And you know, even John Harbaugh knew that in Baltimore. And now Jim, his brother, found out that offensive coordinator Greg Roman is not the right guy to be calling plays. He couldn't win with Lamar Jackson at the level that Baltimore needed him to. And now he's bringing down the offense, if you ask me, of the Chargers. Now, of course, you get the standard. We're going to look everything, blah, blah, blah. And in all fairness, Herbert wasn't himself. He broke a bone in his left non-throwing hand on November 30th. But just because it's your non-throwing hand doesn't mean it does not affect you. So here's where we are. You know, if I'm the organization in San Diego right now, I think that the divorce is coming between Herbert and Harbaugh. And somebody better be proactive on that. Because quarterbacks like Justin Herbert don't come a dime a dozen. And you got to put them, and we see this happen so many times where organizational futility, you know, the inability to make that one move that takes you to the next spot. When you can't do that, there is a significant problem inside your building. Let's be 100% clear and unequivocal about that. All right? So you'd hate to see an opportunity like this wasted, but I mean, I know John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh are brothers, and I know they're really, 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 really close. They come from a father who was a very, very, very successful college football coach. That is the family business. But unlike the dad who set the foundation, the youngins have come through. The only reason they got the Harbaugh Super Bowl was because both Harbaughs went to the Super Bowl that year. Neither's been back since. That just says it all. So before we start crowning them as the first family of coaching in the NFL, let's listen to what the players are saying. And when star quarterbacks have no answers, when you're looking for them to have the back of their coach, it speaks volumes. My question now is, we've seen John Harbaugh get fired. How long is the shelf life for Jim in SoCal? It's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. We all we got. Well, this is your last call for the evening, boys and girls. So smoke them if you got them, as some people would say, as we hit the home stretch of this edition of OG Sports Rap. And we were talking earlier in the program. Of course, I am Professor G. Don't forget Friday night, special night. We're doing a special U thing, okay? No offense to Indiana, but damn, the last time y'all played in a meaningful national championship game, I was 3 years old. All right, let's just go back there. So you guys didn't have the, shall we say, cultural influence that Miami had, which is crazy. I mean, when you got the Fab Five at the University of Michigan, Jalen Rose, Chris Webber, and all those dudes rocking Miami gear. Oh, it's a great story you're going to hear Friday night when we do U-Night here on the network. I'm spending the evening, good part of it anyway, with Melvin Bratton, one of the all-time great running backs, though he did catch a lot of passes, and he literally did give a leg in the national championship game against Oklahoma. But they won. The spirit is back. They won 5 national championships in the 80s, y'all. Let's just give credit where credit is due as a program. So we're going to celebrate that. It's great to have Miami back. One of the few things that I heard that I agree with from the pundits was if Miami wins, it's great for the culture and the history of college football. I would agree with that. You bring some flavor, you bring some swag. You know, NIL plus swag means the U could be up there for a while. You got millionaires given to the program and stuff like that. I mean, that's what happens. So, too, with Indiana. And I dare not underestimate Indiana, having seen them in person. They are a beast. Surgical, athletic, physical. Their coach gives them an edge. They play with an edge. They play confident. It's going to be a tough game. And it'll be a nice, warm Cinderella story. But, I mean, come on. Indiana and South Beach, you would have the story of life there. Mel Bratton is going to share some of the great stories of that University of Miami era, which was so big. I'm telling you, man, it was like a cultural phenomenon. You would see Uncle Luke making rap videos at the time in Hurricanes gear. That was all you needed to know. And that's how Uncle Luke, and Mel Bratton kind of got tight with Jalen Rose. The stories are fascinating. You know, this is what you call the clever broadcast tease. I know people are busy on Fridays, but this is must-hear radio, if I do say so myself. So we're looking at Kick It. We're going to do a U-Night. Since you can't get to South Beach, you might as well hang out with me. And I don't know if you've been paying any attention, but the damn ticket prices for the college football national championship game are not for college students. I mean, on the open market, like at one of those spots called SeatGeek, if you want to sit in the 100 section right now, you got to spend $5,000. That's just for your tickets. Now, I don't know what kind of trust fund babies you know, but I don't know too many people that's got $5,500 unless their parents live in the Hamptons, right? Wow, West Palm Beach down in that neck of the woods. I mean, that's crazy. And they got a student section down there. I guess they're giving away some seats to the students through that Dr. Pepper thing. But the average price of a ticket is more than a Super Bowl ticket. Is that not crazy or what? Wow, it amazes me. And guess what? Indiana folks who are used to traveling en masse to NCAA Final Fours in basketball are buying those $5,500 tickets in droves. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And again, if you got it, you use it. People are caught up in the moment. They're like, we've never seen this before, and we may never see it again. So let's go down there and get after it. That's what makes this game so great. You got the tradition and legacy of Miami against basically an upstart from Indiana. It's, I can't say it's David versus Goliath, but when it comes to the annals of college football history, there is an era that is dedicated to Miami. And make no mistake about that. Miami was so nasty in the mid-'80s that the NCAA had to come up with legislation so that they would stop dancing after they made big plays. Came out with a whole music video of Cane players, I guess, moving something, as one of the lyrics of Uncle Luke might have said back in the day. I mean, it's fun to watch, man. Now all this stoic can't do anything. Everything got to be adjudicated by the eye in the sky. It's not fun anymore. But it was fun back then, and we're going to relive those memories, yes. Wanted to get to my boy, Marcus Freeman, who we talked about a little bit earlier on the show, who's still bumming after his team, the Fighting Irish, was left out of this season's college football playoffs. Now, look, we're glad to see that there is new blood in college football from the state of Indiana. But I'm telling you, if the U had been playing Notre Dame in Miami for this national championship, you think the tickets now were expensive, you'd have been spending $10,000 to sit in the bleachers, But Notre Dame's on the outside looking in. They're bumming. There is a small sort of rumor that they may interview Marcus Freeman, who's head coach of Notre Dame at the time. Now, he says, which I appreciate, after his athletic director just made it a point to disrespect the selection process publicly. And his rhetoric didn't do anything but alienate the Golden Dome from those objective decisions that those suits make for those 5 or 6 weeks that they are on lockdown on the weekends, of course, which is an amazing thing to me. They get together. It's like college athletic administrator time, and we're going to sit back and watch the games in a 5-star hotel and debate on who's getting in, who's getting out. But unlike Pete Bavacqua, the athletic director at Notre Dame, when asked about not being in the tournament, and they should have been in the tournament. Let's be real for a second. I'm sorry, James Madison. Even without the benefit of the strength of a major conference schedule, you put Notre Dame in ahead of James Madison, and you get a better game for it. I'm not hating on the smaller schools, but when you're going to show up and you get a chance to come to the big dance, you need to be ready to party. If you're going to lose by 40, you need to stay home. Sorry. Yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity for the kids. Yeah, they could go to the Mayonnaise Bowl, and I'm pretty sure Charlotte would set it out for them too. Come on, man. But again, I do appreciate the fact that if you got a hothead athletic director, you got to have a cool-ass brother that's coach. And I appreciate it because they put the carrot out there for Marcus Freeman to dangle, and he sent it right back. He says, quote, I'll ride or die with him for this. As we look at the moment, it was obviously disappointing, right? But you have to move forward. That's what we've done as a program. That's what I've done as a leader. And as I reminded the group at our team meeting on Sunday, it's our responsibility to make sure we leave no doubt, right? And moving forward, we can't blame it on someone else. Talk about understanding the pulse in the room. If it is a subjective vote, okay, thank you, Mr. AD, for creating a circumstance where petty other athletic directors who now have the chance to put the high and mighty independent Notre Dame in their place, especially with their black coach, well, we might as well do it. But in lieu of antagonizing the committee, which Marcus Freeman, in my opinion, would have been well within his right to do, he had class. I can't say that about Bavacqua. Okay, let the B rating go. It happened already. You didn't get the extra check this year. Fine. But like Marcus Freeman says, you're still Notre Dame. You win the games you're supposed to win, and you never lose a game that you're not supposed to, and you probably make the tournament. But I'll tell you one thing that is a albatross around them, that association with the ACC. Now, I'm telling you, if they're going to play and need to be in a conference, you want to talk about what's great for the ACC, having Notre Dame and Miami national prominent again, like they were during the days when Jimmy Johnson was on one side and Lou Holtz was on the other. You know, there was nothing greater than the times when they had the games that were dubbed Catholics versus convicts. Quite frankly, the edge of that rivalry alone made college football. You don't see it anymore. It's stuck up, it's rigid, it's NIL, it's transfer portaled and the whole bit. But I like the way that Marcus Freeman handled himself in a moment that may come back to help him when you get subjectivity in a room where there's a discussion about whether you get to what we can now call football's big dance. So and leave it to the coach to de-escalate, okay? Let's be clear about that. And I get the beef. Neither Miami nor Notre Dame played the final weekend, and Alabama lost in the SEC title game and all that. And that game kept the 3-loss Crimson Tide in the number 9 spot and moved the Canes up to number 10. Notre Dame slid down to number 11 and was the first team left off. So James Madison could get in and get blown out. So when you get to a matter of subjectivity the next time, I'm glad to see that Freeman was smart enough to throw the water on a fire that could burn him again next year. Because you do realize in the petty world that is intercollegiate athletics, and it is very, very petty. And you just listen to all the people right now. That's the beef that I got with Nick Saban. Nick Saban always had NIL money. It just wasn't called that. He knows that he had big donors like the Mercedes-Benz dealership in Tuscaloosa. Oh, I'm sorry. It was BMW. My bad. Still, He had his endorsement deal. He got a new BMW every year. He did commercials for him. What the kids get? Crickets. Now he wants to police the way kids are moving and how much money that they're making. Hey, look, as long as they're maintaining their credits and the school that they're moving to is keeping their credits, right? I don't care how much free agency you get in sports, because student athletes should have been work study since the beginning of time. But since the NCAA and this beloved racist, sexist bigot, Walter Byers, who continues to be revered, didn't want to pay student athletes, didn't want people of color to compete, and didn't think that women had a place in sports. Y'all still holding on to that. I don't care. You got to own it. The kids deserve freedom to make their money and piece together enough credits so that they can get a degree. But if you're financially secure, I think these days that may trump your degree. Just one man's opinion about it. It's fun times on Friday. Nonetheless, we got another day on Thursday coming up. And until then, it's your boy, Professor G. Thanks for hanging out with us. The barbershop is closed. So too is the bar. Have a good evening. And as always, remember, take care of each other, because we all we got.